These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. And in the past, I've claimed that I've watched both the weirdest Batman movie and the darkest Batman movie. But now, I don't know if either of those two claims are true. Because today, I'm here to talk to you about what might actually be the weirdest and darkest Batman movie ever made, the latest animated feature, Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham. A movie that pits Batman against Cthulhu and other Lovecraftian entities. There's eyeless minions, mutant penguins, and a mutant penguin. And that's just within the first few minutes of the movie. So this is just fun for the whole family. Now when this was first announced, I initially thought this might be a sequel to Gotham by Gaslight. It's kinda in the same time period, and the Batman suit is identical. It's very reminiscent to the suit worn in that Elseworld tale. But alas, this is an Elseworld. It just so happens that this is kind of the universal Batman costume of the past. What I've always loved about Elseworld stories is the alternate versions of characters that they bring. How these classic characters are adjusted to better fit in with the world around them. And the Doom That Came to Gotham is sure to supply some strange alternate versions of beloved characters. So get ready, because this alternate reality is ready to take your perception of characters and events and throw it on its head. You would think that changing the setting and time period would only change the characters to make them more era appropriate. And while this story does do that with some, with others they kinda take the characters and dynamics and do whatever they want with them. That's not so much a complaint as it is an acknowledgement of what they're doing. I mean, ideally, I think I would like to see characters who are reminiscent of the characters I know, just with, alternate skins or means behind them. But some of these reimaginings are so different that they almost feel like an entirely separate creation. Mr. Freeze is often depicted as being Batman's most sympathetic villain. His origin story is so tragic, he's almost Shakespearean. He's trapped in an ice suit, struggling to survive. And yet he only cares about his survival because it ensures his wife's. Whereas here, Mr. Freeze goes by the name Grendon and is a frozen zombie minion to the forces of evil. You see what I'm saying? It's a completely different thing that is only vaguely similar to something else that we know. This Mr. Freeze has sacrificed his eyes to the doom that will come to Gotham. It feels like Grendon serves the Renfield role. He's the bizarre slave of the big bad, which is definitely quite different from the Mr. Freeze that we're all familiar with. The character is also played by David Dastmalchian, who has become a bit of a DC legend in the last decade or so, starring in everything from The Dark Knight to Gotham, and a bunch of shows and movies in between, and then also again after. The Penguin is a captain that went out to sea and never came back. He's slowly morphing and evolving into a hideous monster, while accompanied by his monstrous penguins. Again, not quite what you'd expect of this character, but yeah, I guess it fits. I guess if I'm trying to explain what this character is in layman's terms, he started off as Burgess Meredith, but he's slowly transforming into Danny DeVito as time goes on. Then you have the man who would be Man-Bat, a crazed scientist who claims he speaks to bats, and that those bats warn him of the impending titular doom that's coming to Gotham. Though there might be something to that, as Bruce Wayne is also getting premonitions as well. And we all know how well it went last time Bruce Wayne got a premonition. You have some characters like Killer Croc who mostly stay the same, except whereas before he was mostly mindless, here he is entirely mindless. Like Mr. Freeze, he's a mere minion, a Lovecraftian monster conjured up by the Ghouls, not unlike this story's Poison Ivy, who is a humanoid that Talia and Rage created to get one over on Harvey Dent. While Poison Ivy has very limited screen time, she leaves her mark on the runtime by leaving her mark on the brand new mayor, Harvey Dent, her touch infecting and scarring him, turning him into this version of events Two-Face. Harvey's story, while as always is tragic, is given so little attention here, and he himself means so little to the plot at hand, both before and after his scarring, it almost makes you wonder why they even bothered. Now, I need to bring this up. I'm aware that this movie is actually based on a 3-issue comic series. It's one that I'm not very familiar with, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that series probably better utilized both Harvey Dent and the Penguin, because here in this movie they're kind of there, and they're being affected by the world around them, but they're not really playing any specific purpose. So I imagine that they probably had a greater role, or at least did something more impactful to the plot in the comic. But here in the movie, they're just kind of chilling. They're sort of there. I'm really happy to see Etrigan the Demon, mainly because I really like the character. Etrigan has always been one of my favorite underutilized characters in DC, so I'm glad to see him make an appearance here. And I'm glad to see him play a part in the story. His characterization is pretty spot on, as there's not a lot of changes to speak of. If there is anything that's changed, it's just giving him clothes that fit in with the setting. While some of the changes and alterations made to Gotham may seem a little bit random, there are also a few that make perfect sense. Ra's al Ghul and Talia feel mostly the same, just now they're more tailored to this particular story. The characters have always been veiled in mysticism and dark magic to begin with, so they're sort of right at home in this type of tale. Replacing the League of Assassins is the Cult of Ghul, though they've allegedly been dead for centuries. Ra's is depicted as an ancient dark priest who used necromancy to lead an army, which, to be fair, isn't entirely unlike him. You know, he wielded the power of the Lazarus Pit, which healed wounds and had the ability to bring people back from the dead. This is basically the same thing, just with less steps. However, a significant difference here comes from his place in the story. While Ra's is still almost all-powerful, he technically isn't the big bad. In actuality, this Ra's al Ghul is surprisingly a servant looking to become a mere vessel for the real master, Cthulhu. There's not as much to say for Talia as there is for her father. The part is well performed, as they brought back the same voice actress from the Gotham Knights video game to play her, but ultimately she's mostly just the muscle, here to distract Batman with her combat as her father acts out his most nefarious plans. She plays the part well, and her part in the story makes sense, but I'm finding it really hard to say anything about her. I think that little summary I gave you, that sums it up. That's all there is. I mean, she does have a little fun line acknowledging her connection to Batman and other media.
I'd rather like to think that under different circumstances, we'd be allies. Friends, perhaps.
Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense here, as they've never had a bonding experience of any kind and have done nothing but fight. I mean, they've shared more fists than they have words at this point in time, but, you know, I guess as a nice little wink and nod to the folks at home, that's cool. But I can't really say much for her. She serves no purpose past being an occasional obstacle. She means so very little to not only the story, but the characters in said story, that after she falls to her death, her father looks at her murderer like he's mildly annoyed. This man is just looking at him thinking, hey, I only have one more of those now. But Batman's rogues gallery aren't the only ones who have been altered for this telling of the tale. Most of the Batman family have been considerably changed. I mean, Alfred is mostly the same, potentially because he's being portrayed by Brian George, who has had some history with the character before. But this new Bat family consists of not capes and cowls, but instead just a close team of people that help Bruce in his day-to-day behind-the-scenes cave work. I actually like this for this version of events for the fact that because there's less technology available, I think it makes sense that Batman would need to have more hands on deck. His day-to-day team consists of the usual likes of Alfred, Lucius Fox, Dick Grayson, and then you have Kylie and Sanjay. Kylie Cain is obviously this story's version of Cassandra Cain, though I will say, unlike the other Bat family members mentioned, this character has a lot less to do with her predecessor. Her predecessor, who is a mute assassin trained since birth by the League of Assassins. I think Kylie isn't a fantastic reinterpretation or representation of Cassandra, but judging the character on her own merit, I was somewhat a fan. Considering that Sanjay usually goes by Jay, and that his last name is Todd, I think it's more than likely this is a stand-in for Jason Todd. And this character is absolutely nothing like Jason Todd. Trust me, I would know. He comes off as a very generic placement holder, which is probably why he's the first one to go. But the most out there depiction of a well-established character has to be this Earth's Oracle. While she's still Barbara Gordon, she's definitely not any version of Barbara Gordon that we're used to. And by extension, certainly not any version of the Oracle that we're used to either. This Barbara isn't incredibly intelligent or gifted with technology, she is instead significantly more mystical. Following an unspecified accident, Barbara is yet again a wheelchair user. Though unlike the Barbara we're familiar with, this Barbara has taken up vacancy at Arkham Asylum, being seen as crazy because she openly claims that she can channel spirits. Substantially less affected by this Elseworld is Jim Gordon. Not a lot has really changed about the character, there's just some minor tampering to make him better fit in with this time period, but the performance itself really stands out, as none other than John DiMaggio is in the role. I would have never thought about this actor for the part, but it works really well, and I wouldn't mind seeing him return to the role in the future. But out of everyone though, I think that Green Arrow is probably the most interesting. Like all around, he's just the best. He has the most compelling story arc out of all the characters, he has the greatest characterization out of all the characters, he has the strongest personality out of all the characters. This is everything you'd hope to get out of a Green Arrow performance, but with a twist. Despite initially being presented as an outrageous, drunken goofball, it's eventually revealed that he's much more three-dimensional than his 2D appearance would let on. It may seem like this Oliver Queen is always chasing a party, but in actuality he's running from his demons, desperately trying to escape a past that wasn't even his. This is an Arrow riddled with guilt, believing that he now carries the burdens of the sins of his father. His father, who as it turns out, murdered the Waynes in Crime Alley, and might actually be this version of the Vent stand-in for the Joker. Oliver is tormented knowing that his father ended his best friend's father's life. He tries his best to be a buddy to Bruce, while also secretly trying to ensure that what happened to him will never happen to anyone again. In effort to seek redemption for his father's sins, to wash away the evil that his father's actions have left on his family's legacy, Oliver becomes a selfless crusader. That's definitely not what I expected when they introduced us to this mess of a man, as he happily, drunkenly boasts about old Bruce stories. I think that tragic and traumatic backstory does a lot to humanize Ollie, and it really pulls the character together. He starts this movie off as a punchline, but he ends it landing punches. Now, if none of that is blowing your mind yet, have I mentioned that Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne, Ollie's father, Henry Queen, Man-Bat Dad, Bartley Langstrom, and the Penguin himself, Oswald Cobblepot, are all hundreds of years old? Having been gifted eternal life and seen incredible success, they've all been gifted eternal life after performing a ritual out of the Necronomicon. Unfortunately, their selfishness slowly summoned the creature forward and destroyed their lives in the process, driving Penguin to the brink of insanity as he slowly loses himself and mutates, leading Kirk Langstrom's father to take his own life, leading Ollie's father to take Bruce's father's life. A vision of Bruce's father Thomas warns his son that the sins of the father will fall upon the son, as the children of those who summon the creature are being punished for their father's crimes. And Batman, understandably, is the only one who could stop it. One addition to the mythos here that I'm a pretty big fan of is the emphasis that's put on bats. Creatures of the night are shown to be vital to this story. They're not just some namesake Bruce took up after he fled from a swarm of them. They've essentially chosen Bruce. And it's only through the bats that Bruce can be guided to salvation. Whatever that means. I know I said it before, but it bears repeating. This stuff is kinda why I love Elseworlds, because it really does just throw your knowledge of this universe out the window in favor of doing its own original thing with the classic. You kinda have to go into these events with no expectations, because you really can't use previous knowledge of these characters to determine what's gonna happen next or what they will or won't do. Because ultimately, despite their names, these characters aren't those characters. At least not in full. Although what's really funny is that in spite of all that's changed, Batman has still mostly remained the same. The setting, the time period, the rest of the characters, the world surrounding him, all completely changed, and yet Batman, totally indifferent to the passage of time. You wanna know why that is? It's because he's timeless. Classics are always in style. I mean, this Bruce Wayne is depicted as being an explorer, but outside of that, that's pretty much it. He's still the same Batman. And I mean that in more ways than one, as returning to the role of Batman is none other than David Gittoli, who played the part before back in Batman Soul of the Dragon, which happened to be another Elseworld Batman tale. I really like the way the movie goes about showing off Batman, as we see him constantly putting his thirst for justice above everything else, ignoring health issues and other concerns about his safety, all to further his research, choosing to examine a substance on his suit as he's bleeding out, rather than seek medical help. I love that. I also love that this Bruce seems like he's always on the verge of snapping. Now, granted, it's actually because there's the spirit of bats that's speaking to him at all times, but still, I think these unpredictable and unhinged actions, whether intentional or not, highlight the character's fractured psyche. The movie really puts Batman through the ringer, Not only does he have to deal with an incredible amount of heartbreak as he sees several loved ones meet their demise during the runtime, but the movie has the gall to resurrect his loved ones to tear away at these still fresh wounds. Batman fights off the demented spirits of his best friend and wards, fighting the only family he's known in an effort to save their souls. To say the very least, that's rough. And after Batman completes the mission, Ollie, in his last breath, even thanks him in the most Oliver Queen way I can think of.
Thank God. Kick their ass, Bruce.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have not been honest with you guys. Remember way back when I mentioned that everything changes but Batman stays the same? Well, that's mostly true. At the end of the movie, there's a change that's made for sure. At the end of the movie, Batman accepts his death and lets Bruce Wayne die so that he can become the symbol that is Batman. By which I mean he literally becomes a giant bat monster in order to stop Cthulhu. Ah, yes. That's the way I was hoping my Batman movie would end. A kaiju fight. That's what I signed up for. This Bat Spirit kind of looks like what would happen if they redesigned Man-Bat to be a character on the show Gargoyles. And this isn't a temporary thing either. This isn't like how Spider-Man turned into a Spider-Man. Batman is literally now a Batman. And that's that. You just need to accept that and move on. As a matter of fact, the movie ends with Batman briefly beating Rage in a monster battle, only for Etrigan the Demon to show up and sacrifice himself to completely take the W away from Batman in spite of his new makeover, and then Gotham City goes up in flames. That's the end. That is not a joke that I am making. That is the canon end of this movie. This is undoubtedly one of the most bizarre Batman stories to ever transition from comic to film. It is so strange and uniquely its own that I can't help but love it for what it is. If I'm being real here, I don't feel like they went all out with the premise. I feel like there was a little bit more in that juice box that they could have gone to, but they didn't quite take it to the heights that I thought they were going to. Nonetheless, I still think it's really good. I really, really like the action scenes. While watching this movie, I was constantly noting how great the visuals were. And in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to use this for the video. I'm going to use that. I can't wait to show my audience this. So visually, it's stunning. I really like the way this movie showcases Batman visually. I think that they really capture the character in a way that a lot of Batman movies simply don't. And a lot of scenes with the character look like they're trailer shots from an actual cinematic movie. So, plenty to love here. And I must say, I really like this Batman design. I know it's been used elsewhere in Elseworlds, but honestly, it's pretty solid and I've never not loved it. I want to give a quick shout out to all his era-appropriate gadgets as well. I thought those were a really nice touch. I think some of the characters made sense as this world's alternate take on those characters, while others felt like they were just doing a completely different thing, but giving a character a similar gimmick. There's a lot to love about this movie. Even when it comes to small details, like that little Lois and Clark cameo at the end, that was great. You didn't need to do it, but you did. And I appreciate it. Even snuck little Jimmy Olsen in there. Look at that. It's cute. I dig it. It's good. It's good. If you haven't checked it out already, I would highly recommend getting your hands on a copy of The Doom That Came to Gotham. I think it's at the very least worth the watch just for all the insanity that it managed to cram into its runtime. And I need to tell you, this is only a review of the video. There's more to it. It's crazier than I made it seem. I am greatly underselling it. And it's not by choice. I'm just not a good salesman. I don't have the words to articulate this absurdity. So check it out for yourself. With all that being said, if you like this video and want to see more Batman content here on the channel, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
I am going to suck your blood. I am Batman.
I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
Nuts to you, you rank spud.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.